We're on Perek
Like they want
Shmuel
shit
Aleph,
from Israel. Yes.
Perek Ches, chapter 8,
I wrote to them.
verse 11.
Chapter 8.
Chapter 8, verse 11.
Writing in the box.
Shmuel Aleph. So then you lose one. Okay, are we ready? You're not going to stand the whole class, are you?
You're president.
No, I have a safe place. Okay, Vayomer, and he said, who's he? Samuel, Shmuel Hanavi. Ze yeh mishpat hamelech.
Excuse me, where are we?
We're the people of Israel.
What?
I'm going to tell you, we're at the point where the people of Israel have requested a king.
Oh, yes.
Shmuel took offense and said, they're rejecting me. Why are they rejecting him? Because he had put in place that his son should succeed him. So he got upset, and he said to Hashem, you know, they rejected me. They don't, what did I do to them? Why are they rejecting me? So Hashem says, don't feel bad. They rejected me for many years already. And I also did a lot of good things for them. So they're rejecting me because I'm really should be the king of Israel, the leader of my people. And they're rejecting me when they ask for a king of flesh and blood. So Hashem says to Shmuel, give them what they want. Let's give them a king. But before you agree to select and appoint a king, anoint the king, you need to tell them the laws, mishpat hamelech, laws of the king, meaning the laws of the monarchy. What rights does the king have? And when they hear the rights of the king, maybe they'll change their mind. So now we're up to the point where Shmuel is about to tell the people, what are the laws of the king? Vayomer, Shmuel says, Zeh yeh mishpat hamelech. This is the law that will govern the authority and the rights of the king. Asher yimloch aleim, the king that you're asking for, get a load of what he can do. Es b'neichem yikach, he'll conscript your sons. V'sam lo b'merkavto, and he'll put them as charioteers for his chariots. U'p'rashav, and he'll make them riders of his cavalry. V'rotzu l'fnei merkavto, and then there'll also be soldiers, foot soldiers that'll have to run. Not only the ones that will drive and operate the chariots and ride the horses, but there'll be soldiers from your children, from your sons, that are going to have to run before the king.
And one is this point is in your book
What point?
about going to the army.
All right, we'll see.
This piece I
didn't put this. But this is in my book. It's there, but not in the way it's here. In that article that I wrote.
I have it.
That article is talking about the authority of the king to draft soldiers. That's in there. This is the same thing. Okay, for us, and then he's going to make officers of thousands. In other words, he's going to have a standing army. And whenever every thousand soldiers will have a special officer above them. And they'll also have regiments of 50. And each regiment will have another officer above them. They're going to have to plow his fields in order to produce food. They're going to have to harvest all of his growth, everything that grows. They're going to have to be in the armaments industry. They're going to have to make bows and arrows and swords and shields and spears and all these things. And they're going to have to make axles and wheels and harnesses and all kinds of things for his riders.
Does it say to prepare the meals?
I don't say that yet because it's up to the daughters to do that. There, next pasuk, Yud Gimel, Ves benoisechem yikach l'rakochot u'letavachot u'leofot. And he's going to take your daughters, and they're going to have to mix all the herbs, and they're going to have to bake, and they're going to have to cook. So it's going to be a large conscription of your children into the service of the king. And your fields and your vineyards and your olive groves that are the better ones, he will take. And he'll give it to his officers and his servants. He'll favor them with your with the best of your vineyards and your orchards, etc.
This is chapter.
Now, this is a question. Excuse me a second. This is a question in the halacha. Can the king just seize property? Does he have a right to just say, you know, I like this field, I like this, I want it, goodbye, I'm taking it? Does he have that authority?
The U.S. government.
The U.S. government has what's called eminent domain, but they can't just take it. They have to have a public purpose. There has to be some purpose that's being served. They need it for a road, they need it for a place or a building, they need it for some reason. Then they can take it by eminent domain. That's what it's called. So there's a shaila that's asked, what is Shmuel telling them that the king can seize their fields? He can't just seize their fields. There's a din of low signal. You can't steal. You can't just take people's fields. So the answer to that is, it's again, if there's a public policy, if he needs it for his war effort, or he needs it for his administration of the country, if he needs these things, then he can take them. But if he doesn't need them, he cannot take them.
So who rules if it's appropriate for the king?
Well, the king will certainly make the initial decision. And if somebody objects to that, they'll take him to court. The king in Israel, under the laws of Israel, or the laws of the Torah, is subject to the halach. He's subject to having to defend himself in court if he does something illegal.
He's up to the Sanhedrin.
The Sanhedrin will judge the king. Okay? Bizar'echem bekarmechem ya'asor. And he will tie your seed and your vineyards. In other words, that which grows in the field and that which grows in your vineyards. V'nosan l'sarisav v'lavodav, and he can give it over to pay the salaries of his servants and his officers. V'esavdechem v'eshivchosechem v'espachurechem hatovim v'eschamorechem yikach v'oso l'malachtu. And he'll take your young men, he'll take your own servants, he'll conscript them to be his servants. And the same thing with your maidservants and your young lads, the ones that are good. V'eschamorechem, and your donkeys. Also, Malachta will take everything in order to use it for his own work. So Nachem Yasor, he'll take a tithing from your sheep. V'atem tiyu lo la'avodim. And in the short, the short and bottom line is, you think you're free, you're going to end up being servants of the king.
He's telling this to the people.
He's telling this to the people, and he's trying to, first of all, Hashem told him to read them the rights of the king and the authority of the king, and he's doing that. But I'm sure he had a purpose of hoping they would change their mind, because he's against the monarchy.
And they wanted Shmuel to be the king?
No.
No. Okay.
Shmuel was a judge,
Right.
and his sons would have been judges.
Right.
We learned that the problem with his sons, they stayed in Beersheba, they didn't go across the country. Anyway,
Oh, yeah.
the people did not like his sons.
Right.
Uzakatem bayom hahu milfnei malkichem asher b'chaktem. And you know what? You're going to end up yelling or crying out to the king for relief from all of his taxes and his assertion of power over you. The king that you have chosen, you're going to end up complaining. Below Yaneh Hashem Yiskem B'Yomu, and God will not answer you. It's your own doing. You've made the bed, now you got to sleep in it. Below Yaneh Hashem Yiskem B'Yomu, God will not answer you. He will turn a deaf ear to your complaints that the king is exercising excessive authority, excessive power, he's basically abusing you. Take it on the chin. Vayimonu ha'om l'shmo b'kol Shmuel. See, now Shmuel had a purpose here to get them to listen and to change their mind and to relent with that question of place upon us a king. Vayimonu ha'om l'shmo b'kol Shmuel, but the nation refused to listen. They heard what he said, but they didn't listen. You know, in Yiddish they say, mehert and mederhert. You know the difference between hearing and their hearing? Hearing is to hear. Can fly right over your head. When you deher, when you hear it, that means you internalize it. You understand what you're hearing. You internalize what you're hearing. They heard what Shmuel said, but they did not want to accept it. They didn't deher what he said.
Just wanting to be like other nations.
That's the next words. Vayomru, and they said, no, 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 don't try to scare us. We want a king. We'll have the same form of government as all the other Gentile nations.
That whole concept, everything coming out of Egypt was don't be like your neighbors.
That's right. Well, let's read this pasuk here. And we too will be like all the other nations. And our king will judge us. He will go out, he'll lead us into war. And he'll wage war for us. And he will fight our battles. In other words, he will be the commander in chief. He will be the chief of the judge in a sense. He'll be the one that has to enforce the law. We'll be just like every other nation when we have a king. Vayishma Shmuel is called Divrei Ha'om, and Shmuel heard all this what the people said. Vayidabrein va'oznei Hashem, and he engaged in conversation with the Kodesh Baruch Hu, telling them what's going on. I mean, Hashem, of course, knows what goes on.
Seems clear that this last week you mentioned some Meforshim says that it's not a mitzvah to have a king, but from Shmuel's standpoint, he's telling him, he's almost suggesting that it's not necessary.
Well,
He's saying, he's talking to the people.
He's trying to disabuse them of their desire to have a king by pointing out to them that the power of the king is subject to abuse.
So it suggests that it's not imperative or not a mitzvah, exactly, to have a king. The way Shmuel is.
So that's what we talked about, I think, last week. But you're right, 100% right. If you view this simply on the face of it, it would seem that Shmuel is totally against the monarchy. But the Mefarshim who say, like the Rambam, that it's a mitzvah, they're saying that Shmuel objected to the way they asked for a king. And they point to two factors in this regard. One is they asked for a king so we can be like all the nations, all the Gentile nations. Well, that's a very poor reason to ask for a king. To be like the Goyim, we're not supposed to be like the Goyim. Second thing is, as they said in Pasuk Chaf, which I just read, our king should judge us. The king is not the functionary that dispenses justice in Israel. The Sanhedrin and the courts that are appointed under the Sanhedrin are in charge of articulating the law. So when they said, when our king should be the judge, that's another point that those who hold like the Rambam point out. Really, a king would have been a great idea, but they asked for it improperly because they wanted to be like the Gentile nations. And number two, they asked that the king have the authority to judge them. And in our scheme of government, the king does not have the power to judge.
Rabbi, Shotrim were under the law of Sanhedrin or the king?
They're under the court. Shoftim v'shotrim, judges and basically marshals, those who enforce the law. But they're under the king. They're under the jurisdiction of the king.
It's the king, not the Sanhedrin. It's very strange because.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Shmuel records this and reports this to Hashem because Hashem knew exactly what they said. But this is part of what Shmuel was complaining to Hashem, that they're rejecting me, they're rejecting you. This is not a good idea, God. Why are you giving in to their demand, and why are you permitting them to ask for and directing me to appoint a king? So here's what Hashem tells Shmuel. Vayomer Hashem el Shmuel, Shma b'kolo. Listen to their voice. Meaning, consent to their request. V'himlachta lahem melech, and crown a king for them. V'yomer Shmuel anshe Yisrael l'chuish v'yiro. And Shmuel, after he had this gathering of the people, and after he read to them the mishpat hamelech, the laws and the authority of the king, and they still wanted a king, he turned to Hashem, and Hashem says, listen, if they continue to persist in this request for a king, listen to their voice, hearken to them, and go back and tell them that I, Shmuel, I'm going to find a king. I'm going to, search for a king for the people of Israel. And he told everybody, go home. It's going to take me some time to determine the appropriate person to be the king of Israel. Of course, by the direction of Hashem.
No primary?
No primary. All right, we're on chapter 9, verse 1. Perek Tes, Pasuk Aleph, Vahi ish miBinyamin. There was a man from the tribe of Binyamin, Ushmo Kish, and his name was Kish, ben Aviel, ben Sror, ben Bechoras, ben Afiach, ben Ishimini. And that was his ancestry. Kish, Aviel, Sror, Bechoras, Afiach, ben Ishimini, a man of the tribe of Benjamin.
Benjamin is son of a right?
Yeah, that's what that's what Rachel and Yaakov called Binyamin, but he was one of the 12 tribes. So this is the reference to the tribe of Benjamin. V'lo haya ben, and Kish had a son, Ushmo Shaul, and the name of his son was Shaul. Bachur, he was select, he was outstanding. V'tov, and he was good. V'yein ish v'nei Yisrael tov b'menu, and there was nobody in the amongst the children of Israel that was better than Shaul. V'shitma ulamala, from his shoulders on up, gavoa mikol he was taller than the whole nation. Now, we could take this in two ways. Physically, he was very tall, or meaning in stature, nobody came to him. He was of a higher stature than anyone else in the nation. Gets down, well, we'll see, but let's keep going. Vatovadna ha'asonos l'Kish. And Kish had probably had some kind of corral of donkeys, and some donkeys escaped. They were lost, couldn't find them. Kish avi Shaul. Kish, the father of Shaul, suffered a loss of some of his donkeys. They got away, they escaped. Vayomer Kish of Shaul beno, and Kish said to Shaul, his son, take one of the lads with you, and go find these donkeys. It's like, an automobile gets lost. You don't just say, yeah, forget it. You got, what's that called? Low jam or something, low jack. You don't want to you call the police, you try to figure out who stole the car, you got to figure out if it's in a chop tank or whatever, maybe you can get it back. So Kish suffered the loss of his donkeys, and he said to his son, Shaul, go take some men and go find it.
Like Moshe Rabbeinu.
Vayavor Bahar Ephraim, and Shaul traveled through the mountains of Ephraim, Vayavor Be'eres Shalisha, and he went to the land of Shalisha, which is some place, probably around the mountains. The Lo Matzo, and he couldn't find the donkey. Vayavru Be'eret Sha'alim. They went to a place which was called Sha'alim. Couldn't find the donkeys. Vayavor Be'eret Yimini V'lo Matzo, and they went throughout the tribe of Binyamin looking for their donkeys, and they could not find them. Haimubor Be'eret Suf. To get to the land of Suf, which is in Israel, so a region in Israel. And Shaul says to the lad that he took with him, who's helping him in the search, let us go back. my father's soon going to stop worrying about the donkey. He's going to start worrying about me and you. Where the heck are we? We've been traveling and going all across the tribal lands and all across the journeying lands and mountains, etc. That took him quite a bit of time. And so Shaul said, Kish, my father, he's going to start to worry about what happened to us, never mind what happened to the donkey. Vayomelo. And so the lad and his assistant says to Shaul, Hine no ish Elokim bo'ir hazos. We're right near the city of the prophet of God. Voish nichbad. And this man is very honored. He's an exalted. He's in the assessment of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he is considered a great person. Kol asher yidaber bo yavo. Whatever he says comes true. Ata neilchu nosham. Let us go to the prophet, to the man of God. Ula yagid lanu es darkeinu asher halachnu la. Maybe he will be able to tell which way we should go in order to find the donkey. Vayomer Shaul Naro, and Shaul says to the young man who suggested this to him, V'hinei nelech u'manovi lo yish. How can we go empty-handed to the prophet? Behold, we will go. U'manov lo yish. What will we bring to him? Because we've been on a long journey, and the provisions that we took with us to enable us to eat during our trip and our search, we finished it. And we have no gift, nothing to show respect and honor to the man of God if we just show up. Moitano, we have nothing with us. We're stragglers here running around the countryside. Vayosef hanala nosa Shaul, and the lad continued to answer Shmuel. Vayomer, hinei nimtzo biyadi reva shekel kosov. I have in my pocket a quarter of a silver shekel. V'nosati lo yishol hakim. Let us give this as a token of respect to the man of God. V'higid lanu es darkeinu, and he will tell us which way to go in order to find the donkeys. The Fanim Yisrael, there was an ancient tradition in Israel, already in those times. This is what a person would say when he went to seek advice from the prophet. Let us go to the roed, the seer. For what we today call a prophet, in those days was called a seer. Somebody uses his eyes to see. He can see into the future, or he can see behind him into the past, etc. They used to call him a roed, the seer. Vayomer Shaul inaro, and Shaul says to his lad, Tov devorcha, great idea. Let us go to the seer, to the prophet, and ask him if he could help us as to what happened to the donkeys. And they went to the city, Asher Shamish Elohim, where Shmuel was residing at the time. But showed up in that city. Hema Olim v'Malei. They are going up the steps that lead to the city. Since they were coming up from the low point was where the tributaries of the rivers would go and collect, and you can go down there and you can draw water to feed your flocks. So they were going up from the low point, and they found these young ladies who were coming out to draw water from the low point, the well. And they said, is the seer home? Is there a seer in this city? Is he home? And they answered them. They said, Yesh. You know what they say in Israel when you ask for directions? Yashar, 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 Yashar. They said to him, he's right, he's beyond you. You're on a straight line. Go, yeah, sure. My hair, quickly go. Why should you go quickly? Because today, Atah, Ki hayom bo la'ir, he just got here. He just returned to the city. Ki zevach hayom la'om abon. For it is going to offer a sacrifice today on the altar in the city. Kavoachem hoyer, when you get into the populated part of the city, came to him also, you will chance upon him, you will find him. Before he goes up to offer the sacrifice on the boma, you'll be able to catch him before he starts whatever ceremony it was in bringing this carbon. And all of the people will be waiting, sitting patiently by their picnic tables or whatever, because nobody's going to eat until the prophet arrives. He's going to be the one that will bless the sacrifice, and of course he will be the one that will offer this. Then all of the invitees will eat. And now go up into the city, because you will find him as it is day today, so too shall you find him. In other words, they are assuring him that Shmuel is going to come to the public gathering to offer a sacrifice. And therefore they'll easily find him. And so Shaul and his lad went into the city. They are coming into the city. Shmuel is coming in the opposite direction, heading towards the Boma, and he wants to go up and make a sacrifice on the Boma, and they meet. They're going into the city, he's coming out of the city, and at a certain point they meet. Bashan Gola is Ozen Shmuel. And God revealed the ear, in other words, he told Shmuel about what to expect, what's coming down the pike. Yoma, what?
How much time passed from the Eretz Israel and Shalom?
400 years.
So it means in this period there were somehow Shomrei Mitzvahs.
There was some what?
Somehow Shomrei Mitzvot.
Good.
Everything changed after Shlomo.
Shlomo is not yet born.
Yeah, but up to Shlomo, they were all Shomrei Mitzvah, more or less.
There were idolaters too. There were Nevi'ei HaSheker. There were Nevi'ei HaBaal. It wasn't all perfect. No, it wasn't all perfect. In our tradition, we have a concept called Niskatnu Hadorot. Did I ever talk to you about that? The generations are smaller in stature than the earlier generations. In other words, the theory is the closer you are to Moshe Rabbeinu and the delivery of the Torah, which he delivered from Hashem on Har Sinai, the further you're away from Moshe Rabbeinu, the less is your profound understanding of the Torah. It's like dilution. It's like you take a photocopy machine and you take a picture, a photocopy of the text. Then you photocopy that, then you photocopy that, and you photocopy. By the time you get down a few, maybe 20 photocopies, you can barely read what you have. Because it fades. The further you are away from the original, the weaker the copy is. The further you're away from Ma'amad Har Sinai, where Torah was given by Moshe to the people, the further away you are, the less intense is the Torah, the less knowledgeable are the scholars of that generation when you compare them to the scholars that heard directly from Moshe Rabbeinu. This is a concept that is honed into you when you're in yeshiva.
What's the name in Hebrew?
Niskatnu Hadorot. The generations became diminished, smaller. I have a grandson, as I may have mentioned to you, who's studying Ish HaTorah, and he's very upset by that concept. And he raised this concept with one of the rabbis there, who tried to explain to him what's the significance, what's the real understanding of this concept. Because, see, in science, you would say, okay, Freud was great, and the face some other scientist was great, but generations that come after it build upon that. They employ the knowledge of the earlier scholar, and they build on it, they expand on it, they study it very particularly and get a profound understanding. And in other words, the scientists of today can do things that scientists 100 years ago couldn't even dream about. Because the scientists are they build one, it's like a structure, build one on top of the other. And then you get to the point where you're today, and nuclear physicists and nuclear scientists are just so much superior to what it was 100 years ago.
Evolutionary.
So that's my grandson's coming from that perspective. Many come from that perspective, and they say, why is this different? Why is it different when in the Torah? Why isn't it the same? The early, you could go back to Rashi. Yeah, Rashi was great, but now we have the Rashbam, and we have who disagreed with Rashi and expounded further, and we have the Bali Hatosis who ask questions on Rashi, and we have other opinions, we have other Rishonim, we have much more knowledge than they had in those days, because we have a printing press, we have Sfarim, we have bookcases full of Sfarim that you can build one on the other. So my grandson was having a problem with this concept. And he asked one of the rabbis in the yeshiva, and he not only asked him, he challenged him. He said, I don't accept it. It doesn't make sense to me. I can't accept it. And this rabbi was trying to explain to him how we view this. And he came to me for a meal on Shabbos, and he told me the question. And I said to him, yes. We believe that today we are like the midgets on top of the shoulders of giants. The giants were Rashi, the Rambam, and the Rabban, and the Tanoim, and the Amoraim. But we are little. We're not as great as them, but we have the benefit of knowing what they said and what they taught. So we are like standing on the shoulders of giants. And while we may not be as great as them, we have the benefit of their knowledge and their wisdom, and therefore we can take it a step further. And then I told him that famous thing, I think I mentioned it to you. Did I tell you about the Mishnah in Avos? I think Mesabik Ba'afar Ragleim, cling to the dust of their feet. I'll say it. The Mishnah in Avos says, Yehei Beischa Beis Vad Lachachamim. You should open your house and make it a gathering place for scholars. Because when scholars come to your house, they'll help, they'll teach you, they'll educate you, you'll study with them. So you should open your house to scholars, invite scholars. By the way, just to digress from my main point, the latter-day Achronim say that you don't have to open your house to rabbis because it doesn't happen. But if you have Sfarim, if you have their books in your house, it's like you've opened your house to the rabbis. They come, you can study their books and their writings, and it's as if they're there teaching you. So anyway, the Mishnah says you should have your house open broadly, widely, and have scholars come to your home. Right? And then it says, and cling to the dust of their feet. That's the simple meaning of the Mishnah. After you have all these scholars in your presence, in your home, cling to the dust of their feet, meaning learn, sit at their feet and learn. And it says cling to the dust because you're like dust and they're like big scholars. So hold on to the dust of their feet, learn from them. That's the Mishnah. Everybody basically explains the Mishnah the way I did just before. Bring these scholars into your home and cling to their teachings as if you were holding on to the dust of their feet, meaning in submission to them, in humility, in deference. Sit at the dust of their feet. Well, the Vilna Gaon had a student called Reb Chaim Volozhin. He lived in the city of Volozhin, And he started the great yeshiva, the Balozhin yeshiva, the yeshiva in Balozhin. And what makes the yeshiva in Balozhin great was that Reb Chaim took the scholarship methodology of the Vilna Gaon and he made a yeshiva out of it. And from that yeshiva, all the other yeshivas derive their Rosh Yeshiva. Slobodka, Mir, Telz, all these yeshivas, Kelm, all these yeshivas that came in Eastern Europe from Volozhin. That's why Volozhin Yeshiva is called the mother yeshiva. It spawned all of the other great Lithuanian yeshivas. Anyway, Reb Chaim Volozhin, who was probably the foremost student of the Vilna Gaon, wrote a parish, a commentary on Pirkei Avot. And when he got to this mission, and he said, make your home open to, a broad spectrum of Talmidei Chachamim, he's the one who says, among others, it's good today to have sparring in your house.
Nefesh HaRuach.
Ruach HaChaim. He also wrote Nefesh HaChaim. That's his most famous work. But Ruach HaChaim is another one of his works, which is on Pirkei Avot. Parish his explanations of Pirkei Avot. Interesting that he would choose to comment on Pirkei Avot. But anyway, when it gets to V'hevei Misabek Bafar Raglayim, he says it does not mean cling to the dust of their feet. No. It comes, Vayisapek, comes from the word Vayeavek, Ish Imo. And Yaakov struggled with the angel, the archangel of Esau. It means struggle. Said Reb Chaim Volozhin, study of Torah is the pursuit of truth. The ultimate goal is to determine the truth of what you're studying and to integrate that truth into your behavioral pattern. Said Reb Chaim Volozhin, when you're engaged in a search for the truth, it's a battle. A student battles with his father, a son with his father, a student with his teacher, two students studying together. They're engaged in a war to determine the truth. So he says that is, the students are warriors and the teacher is a warrior. And the students really contend and strive with their teacher to determine the truth. Like the Mishnah says, from my students I gained more than I gained from my teachers, because students ask probing questions, causing me, the teacher, to have to expand my understanding to reflect and to answer their questions. So therefore, I gain more from my students than I gain from my teacher. So what does Reb Chaim Volozhin say? When a teacher, a father teaching a son, or a Rebbe teaching his students, they are engaged in a war, and he calls it a Melchemes Hashem, a war of God, to determine the truth of the Torah. So he says, and sometimes the student's going to be right in this war against his Rebbe. He compares it to a twig that starts a big flame. Sometimes you need a little student who can build a big flame, because sometimes the student's going to be right. Well, maybe the overwhelming majority of the times the teacher's going to be right, but sometimes the student's going to be right. And then he takes it and makes the most unbelievable statement, which whenever I tell this to yeshiva guys, it shocks them out of their shoes, out of their boots. He says, and I'm quoting his exact verbatim, his exact language, "V'asar la'adam l'kabel es divrei Rabbo k'sheyeshol she'elas alav." It is impermissible. You're not allowed to accept the teachings of your master if you have questions on it. If you're troubled by what your teacher is telling you, not because you want to be a contrarian, you just don't want to disagree. There's some students who everything you say, no, disagree. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the pursuit for truth. You don't accept what your Rebbe is telling you because you think he's made a mistake and you have questions that he is not able to answer to your reasonable satisfaction. Says Reb Chaim Volozhin, if that's the case, you're not allowed to accept the teaching of your Rebbe. It's awesome. So I told my grandson, just because they're telling you that the earlier generations are, and Reb Chaim Volozhin goes on to say, not just your present teacher, but even if it's in the books that are on the shelf from prior generations, from great scholars of prior generations. You can argue on what they say if you don't understand what they say, and you can question what they say if you don't understand what they say, and you're not allowed to accept what they say either. If you think they're wrong and you have strong grounds for your position, for your opinion. So I told my grandson, yes, they may tell you in yeshiva that these rabbis and these from former generations are greater and smarter and they know everything, and who are you to question them? No. If you have serious questions about what they're telling you, you're not allowed to accept their teaching. And therefore, you're on even keel. When it comes to a question that has no answer, you're on even keel. You can have your own decision. You can have your own opinion. You can resolve the question in accordance with your own Torah knowledge, what you need to do. Aminadav, my grandson, has first become quite knowledgeable in Torah, and then you can question, and you don't have to accept.
This is what Rabbi Nachman says. Whatever idea can have about our religion is permissible, as long as you don't change the halakha.
Okay, so, and Rabbi Malachman goes on to say, as long as you're misadik b'afar ragleim, if you're humble, if you're going to do this with an arrogance, you pervert. The moral, I'm going to tell you in a minute. The moral of Miprag, you've heard of the moral Miprag. The moral Miprag says that if you see a scholar who is arrogant, a Baal Ga'ava, he is an arrogant person, do not accept his teachings, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, and the Gemara quotes this, I, God, and a Baal Gaiva, somebody who is arrogant, ino dorim bo'oso olam. I cannot live in the same world with somebody who's arrogant. Somebody who's arrogant thinks he's it. He is the epicenter of the world. Everything revolves and evolves around him. He drives God out of his world, and I cannot exist with the Baal Gaiva. The Maharal Miprag says that if you see a scholar who is a Baal Gaiva, an arrogant person, do not rely on what he tells you the halakha.
Can you apply this to normal people?
What do you mean with normal people?
Not to Rabbonim.
Normal people you certainly don't believe. We're talking about great scholars, great rabbanim. If you see a rabbi who's arrogant, you don't have to you don't accept his halachic psak, his halachic determinations. This explains to us, if you remember, when we learned about Yerovam ben Nevat. Now, Yerovam ben Nevat was the first king of the kingdom of Israel. And the Gemara says, well, first of all, he was chosen because he was Hiram Yad V'Melech Shlomo. He dared challenge Shlomo HaMelech when he thought Shlomo HaMelech did something improper, incorrect. He raised his hand and he opposed the position of the king. So what do we see from such a person? That the truth, he's not intimidated by power, and he will express his opinion to advocate for what he believes is the truth, even in the face of opposing power.
You have an example of opposing Shlomo?
He opposed Shlomo.
Yes, we have an example specific.
You want me to tell you what he specifically challenged Shlomo about?
One where he might be right.
Well, the pasuk says he challenged Shlomo when Shlomo blocked full access to the open plaza leading to the Mizbeach, leading to the Beis Hamikdash.
That's it.
David left that open so pilgrims could easily access what David erected a Mizbeach before the tent in which he put the ark.
Yeah.
And then Shlomo built the Beis Hamikdash on that spot. And David thought there should be easy access he did not close the wall at that point. There was a breach in the wall. Comes along Shlomo, and he narrows that breach by putting Bas Paro's palace in that area. He builds her a palace. It's on the borderline of the city. And he puts her palace there. And what we explained when we learned it is that Shlomo assessed that the weakest point in the wall is the breach, where there's an open gap.
Mm-hmm.
So what did he do? He put Paro's daughter there. Anybody that wanted to attack and get to the Beis Hamikdash through that open gap had to go through the palace of the daughter of Paro, and nobody would do that because Paro would come after them, avenge whatever, or take up for his daughter's protection. Yerava ben Nevat criticized Shlomo, and he said, listen here, David left it open. David, your father, left that place open. We do not obstruct pilgrims, even for purposes of security. And he challenged and he criticized the king. The Gemara says that perhaps he was right, but he challenged him too brazenly. He didn't misavek ba'afarag le'ed. He did not cling to the dust. He did not do it in a humble, meek fashion, submissive to the authority of the king. He arrogantly attacked the king.
Was Shlomo arrogant?
Was Shlomo arrogant? I don't know.
Because if he was right.
Well, no, Shlomo was not an arrogant person. Shlomo was just wiser than everybody.
Okay.
We'll see. Shlomo thought he was even wiser to prohibitions in the Torah.
Yes.
Well, we talked about that when we studied.
Being a
Wise guy.
What?
It's a wise.
Wise guy.
That's a wise guy. Anyway, so that's what I told my grandson. First study, first amass knowledge. When you do, don't be afraid of anybody,
Even Rashi?
even Russia. Of course,
son-in-law.
Hard to do.
no, it's not hard to do at all. The Rashbam, his grandson, argued with him. His grandson, Rabbeinu Tam, argued with him.
Mm-hmm.
All the Balei Atosfos attacked Rashi all the time. Not attacked personally, means he's dead already, but they ask questions. What?
I think he argued with himself.
Sometimes he contradicts himself. But the point is that in Jewish perspective, we do not, you know what they say, fall kairim? You know what fall kairim means? We don't have to bow down and say, okay, you're great, I'm nobody, and bow down.
So every person,
We question everything.
every
that is
person
the
that
whole-
puts on the 2 sets of tefillin disagrees with
Right.
Rashi.
Well, he doesn't disagree because he puts Rashi's on too. But he
Yeah.
puts on Rabbeinu Tam
Yeah.
just to cover his bets. Interesting. My father, who is a Hasidic person, not that he was, he was in heart of Chassid. He put on Rabbeinu Tam's tefillin, I would say somewhere around when he was 50, he started wearing Rabbeinu Tam's tefillin, till he passed away in 86, whatever. He wore Rabbeinu Tam's tefillin. He got me a pair of Rabbeinu Tam's tefillin, and he told me I should start putting on Rabbeinu Tam's tefillin. I said, Abba, I'm not in that Madrega. First of all, I'm not a Chabad Chassid. I'm not even any Chassid. The Chassidim do that, not just Chabad. What's that, a funeral? Usually it's a funeral. All right. Anyway, I said, I'm not in that Madrega. What do I want my Rabbeinu Tam? I have a hard enough time getting Roshis on every day, I didn't say that. I told it's like, it's beyond me. I'm not in that Madrega. I'm not on that status. Along came COVID. And there was a long period of time where shuls were closed. And I couldn't go to shul. So I said to myself, I want to do something to fix the defect in the fact that I can't, among others, we cannot go to shul. I'm going to start putting on Rabbeinu Tam's tefillin every day, B'li neder, to fulfill the request of my father and to do something extra. Put on an extra pair of tefillin. It's an extra hidur, beautifying the mitzvah.
There's some Sephardim that put 2 pairs together.
I know, there are people that put two, the Silverman's people. So I pretty much every day now, B'li neder, I put on Rabbeinu Tam's tefillin. What?
Did you buy them?
No, I inherited that.
You-
You're asking me, would I have bought them for $1,300 or $1,500? Maybe, I don't know.
During praying, we were Gartut.
I daven mincha and Rabbeinu Tam's tefillin.
You were Gartut when davening.
No, I wear a belt.
Hey.
I'm not sure, I don't want to attack it. What is the purpose of wearing a gartel if you have a belt?
Tradition.
It's a tradition. No, it's Hikon L'Kras Elokecha Yisrael. Prepare yourself before you meet God, so to speak. When you meet God, that's in prayer. That's where we meet Hashem. So prepare yourself. That's why you put on a jacket. That's why some people put on a hat. Some people put on a gartel. Some people put on a gartel and a hat and a jacket. So there's ways that you prepare to show. You just don't, it's not like a haphazard chance meeting. You take steps to prepare before you go to present yourself before Hashem. And the gartel is one of those things that you do to prepare yourself.
Knowing this is nice. I didn't know that. It's nice.
It's very nice. I just, maybe if there's another COVID, I'll stop wearing your gartel. No, I'll tell you, there's a big difference between Rabbeinu Tam's tefillin and gartel, because Rabbeinu Tam's tefillin has kedusha. A gartel doesn't have kedusha per se. I mean, you can wear your gartel in the restaurant, but you can't wear Rabbeinu Tam's tefillin in the restaurant because it has inherent kedusha. It has Shema Yisrael and the other parshios in the box. It has inherent kedusha. Whereas a gartel doesn't have inherent kedusha. But you can wear techelas. You can put techelas in your tzitzis, which is a hidur to the mitzvah.
Not everybody agrees.
Well, the reason they don't agree is because
If it is.
they don't know if it's the true pilazon. And then they say there's a very famous letter from the Chazon Ish. It talks about the discovery of manuscripts in the Vatican. There were manuscripts of Rishonim that were lost to Am Yisrael. We did not have them for centuries.
In the Vatican.
All of a sudden, scholars who pore over the manuscripts in the Vatican, which the Vatican stole or took somehow from the Jewish people, from Batei Knesiyos and Batei Midrashas, they have a vast amount of manuscripts in the Vatican that are totally Jewish. They are on subjects of Torah. And they discovered Rishonim, the writings of Rishonim that were lost for centuries. And some of them have opinions that are against our practice of halacha. So they have different opinions, and we have, the Rambam and the Shulchan Aruch, and against the Rosh and the Tur, and all that. We have differences of opinion, and all that we have in front of us every day. But now they added a new Rishon to the equation. Maybe this Rishon was more persuasive. Maybe he cited proofs to his position that were more overwhelmingly persuasive. Said the Chazon Ish, we do not take those into consideration in determining how modern halacha. We'll take them into consideration when we study the background, but we cannot change what we do because of a discovered manuscript that joined us in progress and was not part of Al Masorah. It's not part of the tradition. It joined us abruptly in midstream. We study it. We consider it Torah, but we will not utilize that position to change our determination of our practice.
That's why they don't wear tcheles.
That's one of the reasons they don't wear tcheles, because there's no tradition to wear tcheles. Another reason is they question whether or not it is truly tcheles. Is this the ancient color that the Torah is talking about?
They found.
Now, what they did is, they found garments, remnants of garments, or even garments that go back to the Roman period, which have a blue tinge to them, that are blue. Now, techeles is described as blue, like sky blue. You look at the techeles, you see that your first thought is of the blue sea, and the blue sea reflects the blue heavens, and the blue heavens goes up to the great throne of God, and it reminds you of all the mitzvahs. So they know that techeles is a shade of blue. And they find garments from the Roman period that are a shade of blue. They do a DNA test on those garments, and lo and behold, that what Greenstein and Zuchatovitz, or whatever his name is, have discovered to be techeles is the same DNA. And that's why they say it is authentic. This color blue is authentic. It's an ancient color that goes all the way back to the Romans and all the way back before that to the Torah, to the blue of the Torah. Therefore, they argue very strongly and somewhat convincingly that this blue that we found in this snail is equal to the blue that the Romans used, the royal blues, they would say. And therefore, they hold it's truly part of the actual, it is the actual Techeles. We don't have a tradition because we were in Golos, we were cut off from the snail that washes up on the shores of the Mediterranean, on the shores of Israel, and we didn't have the technological ability to extract the colored dye from them, so we lost it.
I saw a video they found in Turkey, in the sea in Turkey, a
Snail.
worm in the sea.
Yeah.
When you extract it, it's red. And after a few hours, it's red, becomes blue.
Well, but these people, they have a video of how they
Yes,
make
I
the
saw
Techeles.
it, yes.
So I'll tell you another little story. My father, towards the end of his life, he lived to 86, I'd say around 70 years old, he started to wear techeles in his talis. And
It was a chassid.
he was a chassid.
They don't.
He doesn't care about that. My father, that's what I said. He was a chassid, but he believed in his own. Whatever he thought was right, he would do what he thought was right. So he started wearing techeles, and when he passed away, I inherited his Rabbi tefillin, and I inherited his talis.
Wow.
So one day, I'm wearing my father's talis, and I go into the Aguda in Baltimore, right here in Baltimore, and the rabbi there, his name is Rabbi Heidemann, he's a big posek. He comes over to me and he says, Avrum, how come you're changing tradition of you've gone beyond your tradition? We don't wear techeles. It's not our tradition. I told him, this is my father's talis. You understand what I was telling him? It's my house. It is the tradition. My father wore techeles. I'm wearing techeles.
You still.
I said it's my tradition.
You still.
I still wear techeles. היום הזה אני לובש תכלס בציציות שלי ובטלית שלי. I wear by my tzitzis and by my talis. I wear techeles.
I was in a shop sees one day.
In Baltimore.
In Baltimore, yeah.
Yeah.
We lived in Wilmington.
Oh, okay.
So it was a short trip, not that long a drive. Used to go down there once a month and do food shopping and stuff.
Okay.
And I asked him, I said, do you have the tables? The guy behind the counter said, "Ooh." Just like that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, because that's the staid, traditional yeshivish approach.
Yeah.
Have the 5 notes and
I have the five.
one string or 2 blue
I
string?
have both.
1 string or 2 string?
I have some of them I have 1 string and some of them I have 2. I cover all the bets.
It's 2 different sheeters.
It's the Ravid versus the Rambam.
Right. Yeah, we're.
Okay, so what did we get into this? I have no idea.
You don't.
Thank you.
You don't bow to an arrogant rabbi giving sack.
No.
If you have question, you should do
Did
it.
I tell you the story of the bris that my sister-in-law went to? My brother is a dentist. He lives in Efrat.
Yeah, you did tell us.
5 kids in the army,
Yeah.
and the bris, what they would say to Tehillim.
Right.
I said that. I told you a story. Okay, so I won't tell it again. Okay.
How many years ago?
I think it's last
Last week, maybe.
No, I wasn't here.
Okay. All right. You can listen to it. All right. Where are we up to? Is time up? Oh, time's up. Time goes fast when you're having a good time.